Good afternoon and welcome back. This is World News coming to life from Warsaw. I'm Sadia Strzemska. And to begin with the top story this afternoon, the Russian President Vladimir Putin will not be attending peace talks in Istanbul that he had previously called for. For more on that, let's go to our correspondent Alex Kadi, who is on the ground. Alex, Volodymyr Zelenskyy has just delivered a press briefing on the issue. So where do we stand now?
Well, where we stand now is that some negotiations between Ukraine and Russia will happen. We've been waiting for 24 hours in Istanbul, and in fact we've been waiting since Sunday when President Zelenskyy said, well, if the Russians want direct negotiations, I will go to Istanbul and I will be waiting for President Putin. Now the Ukrainian president knows he will have to wait a very long time because President Putin is not coming. Instead, he sent his presidential advisor, a deputy foreign minister of Russia and a deputy defense minister of Russia, despite those direct talks being called for by Vladimir Putin himself. Now, we had some pressure as well from the United States for direct talks to end the bloodshed. That has been the repeated message from President Trump. Now, what will happen, though, however, and Volodymyr Zelenskyy said he wanted this to happen because he doesn't want anybody to accuse Ukraine of not wanting peace. What will happen is that Rustem Umerov, the defense minister of Ukraine, will travel from the capital city of Turkey in Ankara to here in Istanbul, and there will be talks between the Russian side and the Ukrainian side, direct talks led by Rustem Umerov, the defense minister of Ukraine. Now, a particularly interesting move there by the Ukrainians, who have been frustrated certainly by the delay and deflection from the Russian side, despite the leader of the Russian delegation here in Istanbul saying that they are willing to engage in talks and willing to make compromises. Now, President Trump was asked, well, are you disappointed by the fact that Vladimir Putin didn't go to Istanbul? He said, no, he would have never come there if I don't go. So that is another question over these talks. An interesting detail in that press conference by President Zelenskyy, he said, look, we could probably skip a meeting between Vladimir Putin and myself if a ceasefire is agreed at a technical level by these negotiators. Now, top of the agenda for the Ukrainian side, we heard that from President Zelenskyy, is a 30-day ceasefire. A ceasefire supported by the United States, supported by France, supported by the UK, supported by Germany, by Ukraine, by all of its allies, supported by President Erdogan of Turkey as well, hosting these talks. The only question with all this international pressure is whether or not Russia will follow and stop the killing. We understand these negotiations could start as early as this evening, possibly rolling in to Friday here in Istanbul. Certainly a historic moment of these direct talks happening, not between the two presidents, but between their two delegations, hopefully creating a path towards peace.
Alex Kadi reporting from Istanbul. Thank you, much appreciated. And we also have the latest statement from the Russian delegation, so let me read it out for you. Moscow's aim was to secure a long-lasting peace with Kyiv by looking for common ground and removing the reasons for the conflict. Well, we'll see about that. And on that topic, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, Andrii Sybiha, stressed that Ukraine is committed to peace and highlighted the country's high-level representation in Turkey.
The President of Ukraine is here today, and the Ukrainian delegation is present as well. We are ready to support peace efforts aimed at achieving a just and comprehensive peace. Ukraine has never been and is not an obstacle to achieving peace. Yesterday I had very important negotiations in Antalya. An informal meeting of NATO foreign ministers is currently taking place there. I had the opportunity once again to synchronize watches with our colleagues, our closest allies, and coordinate our actions, because this is truly a critical week. It is a critical week for our peace efforts. We are also approaching a point where the world must increase pressure on the Russian aggressor in order to stop the war.
The NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte also spoke out on the notable absence of Vladimir Putin, stressing that Ukrainian president came to Turkey for the purpose of negotiating peace. Unfortunately, the same could not be said about the Russian president.
The ball now is clearly in Russia's court. The Russians are sending a low-level delegation now and not taking up the opportunity President Zelenskyy has been providing. He said, I'm willing to sit with Putin. As soon as a ceasefire is there, we are willing to negotiate a peace deal. So Ukraine is clearly ready to play ball. But that ball is now in the Russian court. And I'm really thankful for the fact that the United States is laser focused. The President and his whole foreign policy team, including Marco Rubio, on bringing peace to Ukraine.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan stated that Russia and Ukraine must, quote, compromise for peace, expressing hope that intensive talks between the two sides in Istanbul will yield results. Speaking at a NATO meeting in Antalya, Fidan also announced plans to discuss the U.S. decision to lift sanctions on Syria.
As long as our aim is to reach peace, we need to ensure that both sides make certain compromises to take a step towards establishing a mutual peace. Frankly, mediators have a very big role to play here. We will continue to provide all types of support on this issue now, as we have provided since the beginning. There is intense traffic on this issue. Many sides are talking to each other, not only in person, but also phone talks are continuing. It is happening at the same time in 3 cities. There is intense diplomacy traffic going on in Ankara, in Antalya, and in Istanbul to establish a ceasefire in Ukraine. God willing, we hope these will yield results.
Vladimir Putin has sent a low-level delegation just to play for time, said Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski on the sidelines of the NATO Foreign Ministers Summit in Turkey. The officials have gathered in Antalya for an informal meeting to discuss ending to the Russia-Ukraine war.
That President Zelenskyy is here in Turkey, ready to talk peace, whereas Vladimir Putin has sent a low-level delegation just to play for time. And we hope that the President for the United States sees this mockery for what it is and draws the right conclusions. Poland supports the ambitious recommendations for defense spending, which we are already fulfilling.
President Donald Trump has arrived in Abu Dhabi, marking the third and final stop of his Middle East trip after he visited Qatar and Saudi Arabia. He is set to participate in bilateral meetings at the United Arab Emirates Presidential Palace. His arrival marks the first visit by an American president to the UAE in nearly 30 years. Earlier in the day, Trump visited Al Udeid Air Base outside Doha, Qatar, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, where he addressed personnel, offering praise for the service. The president also highlighted a multi-billion-dollar package of business and defense agreements recently finalized between the U.S. and Qatar. His trip has yielded a growing list of deals after a series of meetings with regional leaders. Trump and the Qatari Emir signed a deal for Qatar to buy up to 210 American-made Boeing planes. Ahead of his trip, Trump said he plans to accept a plane from Qatar to be used as Air Force One. During his visit to Albania, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer shared that he is discussing with a number of countries establishing return hubs for failed asylum seekers. When asked whether Albania would host UK detention centers, Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama said, quote, "We have been asked by several countries if we were open to it, and we said no, because we are loyal to the marriage with Italy, and the rest is just love." Here's more.
Yes, we are in talks with a number of countries about return hubs, and I see them as a really important innovation, and that is consistent with the work that we've done in relation to UK-Albania reduction in numbers, the work that we've done on law enforcement arrangements with other countries, the return agreements that we've put in place, the record number of returns, and what I'd like to do is add return hubs to that. We are in those talks, and therefore, at the appropriate time, I'll be able to give you further details in relation to it.
And with this, we conclude this news bulletin. Please stay tuned for more. The Bottom Line coming up next.